Negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze antifreeze solid. At these temperatures, one incredible fruit somehow manages to grow in the Arctic. Let's have a look at how the traditional Inuit took this opportunity to their full advantage. When you think of places hostile to life, the Arctic ranks near the top of the list. At temperatures dropping to negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 64 degrees Celsius, we're talking about a cold so intense that if you tossed a cup of hot water into the air, it would freeze before hitting the ground. Your breath crystallizes instantly. Metal becomes so cold, it can stick to your skin. And plants? They don't just die. They surrender without even trying to fight. The Arctic presents a perfect storm of plant-killing conditions. First, there's the obvious problem: extreme cold that freezes cells from the inside out. When water inside plant tissues freezes, it expands, rupturing cell walls and turning living matter into mush. It's like Mother Nature's own version of a blender, except she forgot to put the lid on. Then there's the ground itself. Much of the Arctic sits on permafrost, soil that remains frozen year-round. Only the top few inches thaw during summer, creating a shallow layer where roots might grow. Trying to farm here is like trying to grow a garden on an ice cube tray with just a sprinkle of dirt on top. Sunlight presents another critical challenge. During winter months, parts of the Arctic experience polar night, weeks or even months of darkness when the sun never rises above the horizon. No sunlight means no photosynthesis. No photosynthesis means no energy production. Plants up here need to survive without sun longer than most teenagers can survive without their phones. Water availability might seem like a non-issue in a land covered with ice and snow, but frozen water is biologically unavailable to plants. They can't absorb it. The Arctic is technically classified as a desert in many areas because so little liquid precipitation falls. It's the ultimate irony: dying of thirst while surrounded by water you can't drink. Wind adds another brutal element. Arctic winds don't just howl, they shriek across the tundra at speeds that can reach over 100 miles per hour, stripping away any heat a plant might generate and causing physical damage to exposed tissues. These winds don't just blow, they perform full contact sports with anything standing in their way. Normal crops don't stand a chance in this environment. Wheat needs deep soil and moderate temperatures. Apples require a complex cycle of dormancy and warming. Tomatoes would freeze solid within minutes of being planted outdoors. If regular vegetables tried growing here, they'd need tiny parkas and boots just to survive the first day. For thousands of years, these conditions meant the northern peoples relied primarily on hunting and fishing. The land seemed to offer nothing in terms of plant foods. Early visitors who ventured into these regions often developed scurvy due to vitamin deficiency because they assumed no fruits or vegetables could be found. But nature is stubborn, and life finds a way. Despite everything the Arctic throws at them, some plants have evolved remarkable adaptations to survive and even thrive in this frozen landscape. These aren't your garden variety plants. They're the toughest organisms on Earth, able to withstand conditions that would kill their southern relatives instantly. And strangest of all, some actually produce edible fruits, tiny powerhouses of nutrition that helped Arctic peoples survive for generations. Against all odds, among the few plants that laugh in the face of Arctic brutality, one stands out as the undisputed champion of cold weather survival. Meet Empetrum nigrum, commonly known as the crowberry, a fruit so tough it makes other berries look like delicate flowers at a heavyweight boxing match. Crowberries are small, round, and black as midnight. At first glance, they might be mistaken for blueberries by someone who doesn't know better, but unlike their more famous cousins, crowberries possess superpowers that let them thrive where temperatures plummet to negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit. These berries are so hardy, they could probably survive in your ex's heart. What makes crowberries so special? Their secret lies in cellular adaptations developed over thousands of years. The plant produces natural antifreeze compounds that prevent ice crystals from forming inside its cells. While other plants rupture and die when their cell water freezes, crowberry cells remain intact. This is similar to how cars use antifreeze in radiators, except crowberries came up with this solution millions of years before humans invented cars. The crowberry plant itself is equally impressive. A low-growing, spreading shrub with tiny needle-like leaves that minimize exposure to punishing Arctic winds. These leaves are covered in a waxy coating that reduces water loss and provides additional insulation against the cold. The plant is basically wearing a built-in parka at all times. Most remarkable is the crowberry's ability to photosynthesize at extremely low temperatures. When other plants have shut down completely, crowberry can still produce energy at temperatures that would freeze most living things solid. Research has shown they can maintain some photosynthetic activity at temperatures as low as -13 degrees Fahrenheit. For the Inuit and other Arctic peoples, crowberries weren't just an interesting botanical curiosity. They were essential for survival. These berries provided one of the few plant sources of vitamins and antioxidants available in their harsh environment. Rich in vitamin C, crowberries helped prevent scurvy during long winters when fresh foods were scarce. The traditional harvest time for crowberries starts in late summer and continues into fall. But here's where things get truly extraordinary. Crowberries don't need to be picked before winter. The berries freeze naturally on the bush and can be harvested year-round, even in the depths of winter. They're like nature's freezer section. No electricity required. Unlike many fruits that turn to mush after freezing, crowberries maintain their structure and nutritional value when frozen. The Inuit could break them off frozen branches whenever needed, an essential food security strategy in a place where meals couldn't be taken for granted. Crowberries have another surprising quality: they last forever. Well, not literally forever, but close enough in food terms. Picked berries can be stored for months without spoiling, even without refrigeration. Ancient techniques included storing them in oil or animal fat, creating preserved foods that would last through the longest winters. The taste? Crowberries aren't going to win any flavor competitions against strawberries or raspberries. They're somewhat bland with a slightly bitter aftertaste. Imagine the flavor of disappointment with a hint of survival. But in the Arctic, taste takes a backseat to nutrition and availability. Perhaps the most mind-boggling fact about crowberries is their ability to grow on virtually nothing. They don't require rich soil. In fact, they commonly grow directly on rock surfaces, sending shallow roots into cracks and crevices. A study from the University of Arctic Biology found crowberry plants growing on bare rock with less than 1 centimeter of organic matter to sustain them. Despite their incredible survival abilities, crowberries never became commercial superstars like blueberries or strawberries. Their modest size and underwhelming flavor profile couldn't compete in global markets where taste trumps toughness. Yet, in their native range, they remain one of the most important wild foods gathered and consumed today. These remarkable berries represent just one way Arctic plants have adapted to grow without the basics that other plants need. But the story of Arctic plant survival goes beyond berries alone. How do plants survive in a place where almost nothing should grow? The answer lies not in what Arctic plants have, but in what they've learned to live without. Traditional farming depends on 4 basic elements: rich soil, warm temperatures, adequate sunlight, and regular rainfall. The Arctic offers exactly 0 of these ideal conditions. Yet life persists through adaptations so clever they would make any engineer jealous. Let's start with the soil problem. Arctic soil is mostly non-existent, and what does exist is poor in nutrients. The active layer, the portion that thaws in summer, rarely exceeds 12 inches deep. Below that lies permafrost, eternally frozen ground that plant roots cannot penetrate. Arctic plants have basically mastered the art of living in a frozen sandwich with just the top slice available. Rather than fighting this limitation, Arctic plants embrace a go wide, not deep strategy. Their root systems spread horizontally instead of vertically, creating vast networks just below the surface. Some species, like Arctic willow, can extend roots outward for several feet while staying within the top 2 inches of soil. A study from the Greenland Ecological Research Station found that some Arctic plants devote up to 70% of their total biomass to these shallow root systems. Temperature presents the next major challenge. While crowberries have their special antifreeze, other plants use different tricks. Many Arctic species are cushion plants that grow in tight dome-shaped clusters. This shape traps heat and creates a microclimate several degrees warmer than the surrounding air. They're essentially wearing a living sweater knitted from their own bodies. Snow, surprisingly, becomes an ally rather than an enemy. A thick blanket of snow acts as insulation, keeping soil temperatures relatively stable around 32 degrees Fahrenheit, even when air temperatures plummet to -50. plants that grow low to the ground benefit from this natural protection. During fierce Arctic winters, being buried alive is actually the goal, not the problem. The light situation in the Arctic is another extreme that plants must overcome. Summer brings the midnight sun, constant daylight that can last for weeks or months. Winter brings the opposite, total darkness for equally long periods. How do plants cope with this bizarre schedule? Many Arctic species compress their entire life cycle into the brief summer window. From the moment snow melts, they sprint through flowering and seed production at record speed. Research shows Arctic plants can complete reproduction cycles in as little as 4 to 6 weeks, roughly one-third the time required by their temperate cousins. It's like they're running a biological sprint, while southern plants are enjoying a leisurely marathon. To maximize the benefit of brief summer sunlight, Arctic flowers often track the sun's movement across the sky, turning their faces to follow its path. This solar tracking allows them to absorb up to 30% more solar energy than if they remained stationary. The flowers even form bowl shapes that focus sunlight like tiny satellite dishes, raising their internal temperature above the surrounding air. The permafrost that makes traditional farming impossible serves a surprising benefit: natural refrigeration. Ancient Inuit communities dug storage chambers into the permafrost to preserve food. These ice cellars, called sigluak in some dialects, maintain freezing temperatures year-round without any technology. Nature provided free freezer service long before electricity was invented. Modern Arctic communities have built upon traditional knowledge while adding new technologies. In Inuvik, a town in Canada's Northwest Territories, residents created a community greenhouse inside an abandoned hockey arena. By capturing solar energy through south-facing windows and using insulated walls to retain heat, they produce vegetables despite being 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. In Alaska, some communities use seawater to heat greenhouses through underwater pipes. The ocean, which remains above freezing year-round, provides enough warmth to keep growing spaces viable. A greenhouse in Nome, Alaska, uses this method to grow fresh produce despite being surrounded by snow for more than half the year. Hydroponics, growing plants in nutrient-rich water instead of soil, has revolutionized Arctic farming. Since quality soil is nearly impossible to find naturally, creating soilless growing environments eliminates one of the biggest barriers. A research station in Svalbard, Norway, maintains a hydroponic facility that produces fresh greens at 78 degrees north latitude, less than 800 miles from the North Pole. These innovations build upon the fundamental adaptations that wild plants have developed over thousands of years. The persistence of Arctic flora demonstrates that life finds a way, even when nearly every environmental factor says it shouldn't be possible. When summer finally arrives in the far north, the frozen landscape transforms into something unexpected. When most people think about the Arctic, they picture endless snow, ice, and barren landscapes. Few imagine the explosion of life that occurs during the brief summer months. For a magical window of time, typically just 6 to 10 weeks, the tundra transforms from a frozen wasteland into a living carpet of plants, flowers, and yes, berries. This transformation happens with remarkable speed. As 24-hour daylight bathes the landscape, temperatures rise above freezing, and the top layer of soil thaws. Within days, dormant plants spring to life. Areas that appeared lifeless suddenly burst with color and activity. The Arctic goes from playing dead to hosting a wild party faster than teenagers clean their room when company's coming over. The most visible evidence of this transformation is the abundance of berries that appear across the tundra. Beyond the tough crowberry, several other species thrive in these harsh conditions, each with unique properties that made them valuable to traditional Arctic cultures. Cloudberries stand out as perhaps the most prized Arctic fruit. These orange-amber-colored berries resemble raspberries in structure, but offer a unique flavor that combines apple, mango, and apricot notes. Rich in vitamin C, containing up to 3 times more than oranges by weight, cloudberries provided essential nutrition for northern peoples. A single cup of cloudberries contains more than 150% of the daily recommended intake of vitamin C. What makes cloudberries remarkable is their extreme cold tolerance combined with delicious flavor. Unlike crowberries, which sacrifice taste for survival, cloudberries manage to be both incredibly hearty and genuinely delicious. They're like that one kid in high school who was both smart and popular. It just doesn't seem fair to everyone else. Cloudberry plants have adapted to the harsh conditions by growing close to the ground, where they're protected from fierce Arctic winds. Their flowers face upward to track the sun, maximizing energy capture during the brief growing season. Most impressive is their longevity. Cloudberry plants can live for decades, patiently waiting through long winters for their moment to shine during brief summers. Bearberries represent another important Arctic food source, though with different uses. These small red berries grow on trailing evergreen shrubs that form dense mats across the tundra. While not as tasty as cloudberries, the flavor is mealy and somewhat bland, they were valued for medicinal properties. Tea made from bearberry leaves contains natural antibiotics and was used to treat urinary tract infections long before modern medicine existed. The plants earned their name because bears enthusiastically consumed the berries in fall, fattening up before hibernation. Bears apparently aren't food critics. They'll eat anything when winter's coming, much like college students during final exams. Lingonberries bring a splash of bright red to the tundra landscape. Known for their tart, slightly bitter taste, they became a staple in Northern European and Arctic cuisines. These berries contain natural preservatives that allow them to keep for extended periods without spoiling, a crucial property in places without refrigeration. Traditional recipes often paired lingonberries with fatty meats as their acidity helps cut through richness while aiding digestion. A remarkable feature of lingonberries is their two flowering periods, once in late spring and again in late summer, which increases their chances of successful reproduction in unpredictable Arctic weather. Those that flower later often remain on the plant through winter, providing food when other sources are scarce. Beyond berries, several remarkable vegetables and herbs manage to thrive in Arctic conditions. Wild rhubarb grows surprisingly well despite the harsh climate. Its large leaves capture maximum sunlight, while deep roots tap into soil nutrients. The sour stalks provided a welcome change from meat-heavy diets and contain compounds that help prevent scurvy. Labrador tea, though not a vegetable, played an essential role in traditional Arctic diets. This evergreen shrub produces fragrant leaves that, when steeped in hot water, create a vitamin-rich beverage consumed throughout the year. The plant contains mild stimulants similar to caffeine, helping combat the fatigue that comes with prolonged darkness and cold. Wild onions add flavor to the Arctic food palette. These hardy plants emerge almost immediately after snow melts and grow with remarkable speed. Their strong flavor made them valuable for seasoning preserved meats and fish. These onions grow so fast you can almost hear them saying, "I don't have time for this. Winter's coming back soon." All these plant foods played crucial complementary roles in traditional diets, otherwise dominated by animal proteins from hunting and fishing. The diversity of Arctic plants allowed for a more balanced nutritional intake than outsiders might expect. Studies of traditional Arctic diets show they provided adequate vitamins and minerals despite the extreme limitations of the environment. While nature provided these remarkable plants, the Inuit and other Arctic peoples weren't content to rely solely on wild harvesting. They developed innovative approaches to encourage plants to grow where they otherwise might not. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples never developed agriculture as recognized in warmer climates. No endless fields of grain or organized crop rotations existed. Instead, they created something far more impressive: targeted interventions that enhanced natural growth in a landscape determined to remain barren. One key strategy involved the deliberate manipulation of microclimates. By identifying areas where snow melted first in spring, Arctic people would build low stone walls on the north sides of these spots. These walls served two purposes: blocking cold northern winds and reflecting sunlight to create warmer growing pockets. Temperature readings in these modified areas show increases of up to 15 degrees Fahrenheit compared to surrounding terrain. The Inuit were basically telling winter, "Nice try, but we found your weakness." Then built tiny summer zones right under its frozen nose. South-facing slopes received special attention. These naturally warmer locations got additional modifications: rocks placed strategically to absorb daytime heat and release it slowly overnight, preventing tender plants from freezing during temperature drops. Dark-colored stones were preferred for this purpose as they absorb maximum solar energy. What truly sets Arctic cultivation apart was the development of early greenhouse-like structures. Using materials available in treeless environments, people created translucent covers from stretched animal intestines or fish skin. These materials allowed sunlight through while trapping heat, the same principle behind modern greenhouses. When placed over small growing areas, these covers created protected spaces where temperatures remained above freezing even on cold days. A particularly clever innovation involved using whale bones as greenhouse frames in coastal areas. The massive rib bones created arched supports over which coverings could be stretched. Archaeological findings along the northern Alaskan coast reveal evidence of these structures dating back more than 800 years. These whalebone greenhouses were like the world's first drive-through restaurants, except instead of driving through, you'd wait 3 months for your food to be ready. Still faster than some pizza deliveries. Root vegetables became the unexpected success story of Arctic cultivation. While modern assumptions might suggest only above-ground berries could survive, traditional knowledge proved otherwise. By creating deep growing beds filled with a mixture of composted seaweed, fish waste, and the limited soil available, Arctic gardeners established surprisingly productive growing areas for hardy root crops. The beds were typically located near dwellings where cooking fires and human activity raised ambient temperatures. Food waste and urine, both excellent fertilizers, were systematically added to these growing areas, creating nutrient-rich environments in otherwise poor soil. These techniques allowed for limited cultivation of wild turnips, various tubers, and even a type of wild potato in some regions. Though small by modern standards, typically no larger than a golf ball, these root vegetables provided crucial carbohydrates and vitamins in a diet otherwise dominated by animal protein. The vegetable gardens required intensive management. Protection from wild animals came through various means, including surrounding plots with sharp bones or antlers pushed into the ground, creating natural fencing that discouraged hungry creatures. These were the original garden security systems. No monthly subscription fee required, just some pointy leftovers from last week's dinner. Plants needed regular attention to maximize yield during the brief growing season, with careful thinning and weeding to ensure the strongest plants receive maximum resources. Seed gathering and selection represented another sophisticated practice. By identifying and collecting seeds from the hardiest, most productive wild plants, Arctic peoples gradually developed semi-domesticated varieties better suited to their needs. This process of artificial selection, choosing which plants would produce the next generation, mirrors the beginning stages of agriculture worldwide, though full domestication never occurred due to environmental limitations. Perhaps most remarkable was the development of portable growing systems. In some regions where seasonal movement was necessary, small growing containers made from hollowed logs or animal stomachs allowed plants to travel with the community. These early containers, filled with established soil and growing plants, could be transported during seasonal migrations and placed in new favorable locations. It was like having a pet rock, except this pet actually fed your family. Talk about a low-maintenance, high-reward relationship. These modern innovations honor the ingenuity of traditional knowledge while addressing contemporary food security concerns. The determination to grow food in a place that seems to forbid, it continues as an unbroken tradition spanning countless generations, proving that human creativity can find solutions even in Earth's most challenging environments.